Hello, everyone. I'm sitting here with what I think it's apt to say a legend in the Amazon space, Mr. Abe Chomali, who has very easily the most recognizable beard and profile in the entire Amazon world. So if you haven't met Abe before, I'm really pleased to introduce you to him today. Really lovely guy based out of New York that we've known for a really long time, great friend of ours. But Abe, thanks for taking the time to jump on the chat today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me with an introduction like that. You started me off with a big smile, and I might even be blushing right now.
Pretty easy. It's pretty easy intro to make, man. We've known you for a long time, and I think a lot of people familiar with you in the space. But for those that aren't and maybe stumble on this for the first time, I always love to start with just how did you end up here with an Amazon agency? I know a little bit that you were kind of in the camera and photography space. Can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory and just how you ended up with XP Strategy?
Oh, so yeah, for sure. So the shortest version of a story that spans about 30 years.
Yeah.
The shortest version of that story is that I sold for 25 years plus. There was a point at which I was making a pivot in business. And when I had the whole world of new businesses open to me, I leaned into the part of the business that I always liked best. For decades, in all of the retail businesses I've owned, I typically handled two parts of the business. One is the advertising, one is the customer service. The customer service had me, it made my beard white before its time. It put me into it gave me all kinds of conditions that have me in the Rolodex of doctors all across New York City. But the advertising was endlessly rewarding. There's something great about doing a thing and seeing sales happen out of it. There's something interesting about trying to figure out when something is going wrong and trying to unravel it. And I said, I can make a business out of this. And I have been doing that since 2018. And
2018 is when you started XP Strategy?
Yeah.
And why an agency, Abe? Why not just get your own products and set up your listings and take the brand route?
So I did that myself before. So I started in 1991. I was selling for one of the mail order houses in New York City. We used to sell cameras and electronics. We were literally selling, even before digital cameras were a thing, we were selling film cameras. Yeah, Abe's of Maine.
Abe's of Maine. Yeah, Abe's of Maine. Yeah.
I'm not the Abe in Abe's of Maine, but yes, at Abe's of Maine.
Yeah.
So I did that for a bunch of years, and then I went out on my own to do the same. Over the next 25 years, I had different partners, different opportunities in terms of what I was actually selling at any point in time, or where we were selling the product. But I never enjoyed managing people. When you handle a lot of merchandise, a warehouse is a thing that you have to manage. Staff is a thing you have to manage. And handling in-person staff is different than handling remote staff. So I have to worry on Monday morning if anybody had a great weekend. I have to worry on Friday if people are going to show up because they want to take off for a long holiday weekend, but we've got orders to ship out. You have to worry about interperson dynamics, and those dynamics are very different than remote, where people can just not interact with each other most of the time. When you're physically in a space together, those dynamics are a whole thing to manage. So that's one thing that I never really loved. And the other part is simply handling inventory and the money related to inventory. When you sell product, money moves around in a very different way. It requires sometimes balls of steel to manage. When we were selling at our highest point, when we were doing close to $50 million a year, we were placing millions of dollars in orders in April and May and June. We were taking delivery of the goods in September and October, and we had invoices that were due before the first unit sold in that Christmas. And we were sweating. You sweat until December 14th, until you get to zero, So that
requires some financial engineering, doesn't it?
Yeah. And most of the time I had partners that would handle it, but I certainly would not consciously want to go do that again if I could get away from it. Now, there are definitely things that I miss, which I don't get as an agency. There is no such thing as $1 million sales day. I don't ever make revenue of maybe in the future, but there's no such thing as even a percentage of that. When you're
Yeah.
in retail, there are like I have a few credit card machine end of day things slips still sitting in a folder somewhere where I printed out that end of day on like a Monday in December, and I said, that's something. I got to save this.
Although, I bet some of
It'll
your
never
clients,
happen again.
maybe some of your clients get close to that on a Prime Day or otherwise at some point. Right?
I definitely work with brands that hit those numbers on Prime days, and I am happy for them. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy when the things we figure out execute as planned, and there's a good sense of success on those days for sure.
Different kind of receipt, but still cool to see the number. I know it's always fun to get those client wins. And I would say too, Abe, obviously with that long history in retail and D2C, I like the financial planning and those kinds of things suck, but you also have some empathy to those, which I'm sure informs how you interact with your clients and how you scope your contracts and do all those things. So maybe talk to me a little bit about just, as you work with clients, how do you like to work with clients? What does that engagement typically look like?
There are a lot of facets to an engagement. There is, oh boy, I wonder which parts you're thinking of. Tell me more about that. Like, what kind of an answer were you thinking of?
Maybe let me rephrase.
We can cut out the part where I'm asking you to figure it out. But yeah,
let me just reframe it for you. What I'm trying to get for folks is a sense for, number one, who you really like to work with, what that best kind of persona is, who you see have the most success, who you have the most success with. On the flip side, also disqualifying some folks maybe that it's not a good fit for your services and your packages. Ultimately getting to literally, how do you construct your contracts? Like, what does that fee arrangement actually look like, and what services are covered underneath of that?
Got it. All right. So in terms of those relationships and what the business relationships and structure look like, I think I have a pretty wide ranging avatar of who I would and want to work with. I work with brands doing anywhere from 5 figures a month up to mid and upper 7 figures per month, which is a wide range. What I typically find is interesting, and it's sort of crystallized after a while, is that once you hit something like $100,000 a month, from $100,000 a month all the way up to maybe even $1 million, the work you do is roughly the same. You just need more people doing the same things. But at $100,000 a month, you'll typically have employees. You'll basically need to start planning things differently than whatever is in front of you that morning. So you are running an actual real business once you get to $1 million or $2 million a year. And it's the same whether it's $1 million a year, whether it's 10 million a year. It's just however many people you're throwing at the business. Past $1 million a year, then there are different sorts of considerations. Money planning looks very different. Inventory planning looks really different at that scale. Quarterly planning and budgets are a thing. I mentioned money, but like with smaller brands, I rarely have a set budget. We might have an initial number that we want to stay under, but there's a general guidance in which we say, okay, as long as the metrics are acceptable, you have a green light to spend what you need. That's
all about return, feeding the cash flow cycle, doing those.
Right. Let's make sales. Let's make business. Once you get to a point where you're doing $10 million a year, you are actively modeling purchases for 3-4 months at a time. And when you are modeling your inventory and having expectations of sales, which are pretty decent expectations of sales, not just we're going to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Once you have a reasonable expectation of what those numbers are, you can set a reasonable number for what you want to and expect to spend. And you need to spend above the minimum amount of that range, or else you won't move the goods. It's not a good thing to not spend a lot of money. And you don't want to spend more than the top of your range, because you'll sell through your goods faster than you can replenish. So the considerations are different with larger brands. Smaller brands, almost any minimum purchase from a factory will get them several months of inventory. So they're thinking about things differently. Now, in terms of who I like to work with, besides the range of businesses, of course, I like people who are pleasant. I like organizations which are reasonable, and that's not a given, not at all. Not every
No, it's funny.
personality.
Nobody else has really brought that up, but I think it's actually a really important parameter. Is like the personality fit. I think being kind and reasonable are they're serious considerations.
It's absolutely a thing. It's a thing at the level of me and my point person at the business I'm working with or the brand I'm working with, but also it's a factor at the team level. So I have a number of client success and brand managers. Sometimes when I'm working with their counterpart at the other company, it's not always a fit, and sometimes we do have to change people around. So I have some specialists who are like almost OCD in their attention to detail, but that ends up looking like them bothering the brand very frequently when they don't get a spreadsheet back fast enough. Now, not everybody responds to that. A lot of people are not detail oriented, and that OCD drives them crazy. And the other way around, some people will just tell us get it done, and or they want somebody on our end who'll say, I got you, boss, and make it happen.
Yeah.
So
that's a really important point. I just want to like double click into that, Abe, because I think, I've seen your journey a little bit just in the time we work together as well, in really trying to figure out your team and getting the right people in the right seats. And, one thing you said there is like a good culture fit from a client standpoint, but you have people that can handle maybe the more demanding client. And you can also have people that maybe have the more lax client that just wants to throw it over the fence and have you do it. Sounds like you protect your team a little bit in that as well, in just, making sure that those relationships are right. How do you screen for that when you're first interacting with a brand? Like when you come across a potential new client or brand, like how do you figure that out quickly, knowing that obviously we don't want to say no to a lot of business when we're in the agency world, right? But like, how do you get to that right fit quickly?
So I guess there are a few ways that happens. So the first one is that most of my business comes from referrals or from people who already know me through my presence in social media. They're already predisposed to being interested in working with me. Other businesses, other agencies have a cold calling model in which they are interrupting the flow of that other business's work. Hey, come work with me. And they have to get over the initial wall of suspicion, the initial wall of validation. I already am past that in a lot of cases. When it's through a referral, I'm already doing good for the person that referred them. That's 70% of the conversation right there. The other part of it is I have been doing this a while. So between selling and customer service and owning the agency, I've spoken to a lot of people, and I can feel when there's a headache under the, I can feel when there's a headache under the covers. Yeah. I can also tell when when pushing back will be okay. There are some people who I have a very back and forth relationship with, and those can be super valuable also because those people make us work hard and
make you better.
I have a couple of brands who I almost definitely lose money no matter how much I charge them, simply because they require so much human resources from me. And my team will say, Abe, this is a lot. And I'm like, listen, this brand makes us work hard. And there are things that exist in my company now because I had to build it for this brand. Mm-hmm. When they have 200 parents and 14,000 variations between sizes and colors and doing, 8 figures a year and expecting every single SKU to be a winner, that there is a lot going on there.
Changes some system and scale and processes pretty quickly, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, so I enjoy it. Now it's hard, and I definitely sleep less because of that relationship, but I also have a big sense of satisfaction when we have a good season, when we do a piece of good work, and it's nice because they recognize it also. There have been times where I have come up with a solution to a challenge, and they recognize the ingenuity in it, and they'll actually say, this is something, and that makes it worthwhile.
Certainly. I mean, I know, having been in the agency world before, I think that's what keeps you coming back, is when you get those good relationships and you get wins for folks that you actually genuinely care about and build relationship over time. Speaking on that, Abe, I know since 2018, you're working across the spectrum of kind of sizes of clients, very specifically on like services that you provide and the types of arrangements that you make with your clients. Like, sounds like you kind of cover the gamut as far as Amazon management goes. Would you consider yourself like a full service agency? Do you have different packages? Like, how do you actually kind of form that up for your clients?
So I like to call my agency a PPC plus agency.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? The scope of the work I'm offering is a PPC scope of work. I definitely don't offer full service management. I definitely don't offer a wide range of services. But at the same time, brands often need things outside PPC. And when you are having conversations with your brand manager on a regular basis, you'll ask about things. 15 minutes before this podcast, one of the brands I work with sent me an email and they said, Abe, our Walmart account was suspended. Do you have a contact that can help us with this? Sure. And mind you, this brand that had an issue is not some reseller or somebody selling something sketchy. This is actually a Fortune 500 company. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you see us on every shelf in America and it is us. So we don't know why we're suspended. Right. Now, a PPC only agency will say, goodbye, this is not our department. We'll see you later. Mm-hmm. I help them with that. And I don't offer it as a set service for the simple reason that I want to be doing it as a favor. I don't want to be held with my feet to the fire if I'm too busy for it or if it's outside of my skill set. Sure. When I first started the agency, I actually did say I can manage full accounts for brands. And I quickly learned that that is not a good business model for me. It might be for others, but not for me, because every problem is my fault. So sure. When Amazon suspends a listing, it's my fault that it's not up yet. Or when Amazon hasn't checked in a shipment yet and it's taking weeks and weeks and weeks, it's my fault. Why haven't I nudged somebody to open their container? So enough of that, and you sort of start to run away from it quickly.
I think what you're hitting on is something, really kind of old as agencies are old and stands the test of time, which is you really have to kind of figure out the scope and what you're good at, and you can't do it all the time. And there's a trade-off of having the right team for the right thing, and then being able to be really good at that thing instead of being spread too thinly, right, across a lot of different things. So it sounds like you've kind of really specialized in the PPC stuff. You do the necessaries in order to get accounts in shape to be able to be successful with PPC. Sounds like, right? So does that typically manifest in some kind of like fixed fee plus % of spend contract, or do you do some other arrangement?
Yeah, we typically do a fixed fee plus a piece of sales.
Sales, okay.
We've experimented with all different models, and there's a reality in which a piece of spend versus a piece of sales, there's just a crossover point in terms of ACOS where one is equivalent to the other. So with a high ACOS account, a piece of spend ends up being less expensive. A piece of sales ends up being less expensive than a piece of spend, and vice versa. So it sort of balances out. And of course, we are not like McDonald's, in which that's just the price on the board that I'm going to charge you. We make adjustments based on the scope of the account, based on the nature of the work we'll be doing together. For whatever it's worth, there are some brands in which I will charge based on the difficulty I expect to have with them. And I'll actually tell them directly. So a funny story is in the first days of the agency, I had a client. We worked together for a year and a half, and he ended up selling his brand. It was fine. That was the end of the engagement. He sold his brand. He comes to me 3 years later, and he has a new brand. He has a couple of partners, and he wants us to work and help his advertising again. After the first let's get to meet you call, even though I knew him, I didn't know his partners. After the first call, I realized one of his partners does not know a lot about Amazon and is super inquisitive.
Yep.
And I knew that I will have to be investing a lot of time to explain basic terms. Yep. And I gave him a pricing. That flat fee included it. And the client tells me, Abe, this is like a significant percentage more than what we worked with last time. It's not scaling up. And I said, listen, I know that with this account, I will have to personally spend more time than I would for a normal account of this size. I'm pricing it in. And I told them like that. I told them, listen, making myself available at this price more than I would normally need to. If you're spending $100 a month, that normally takes a certain amount of my time, you're going to be asking me for 40% more than that. And I could say, no, I don't have time for you, or I can make it worthwhile all around. And they understood it, and they've been happy ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's real value. To the point, they accepted the contract, right?
They haven't just accepted the contract. They've been very happy with the work, and they've expressed it multiple times.
So this is really interesting, right? Because I think, at the outset, what sounds like, hey, there's a little bit of a like pain in the ass tax, right? If you're going to be asking.
I didn't know if I could use that language, but it's
certainly, exactly yeah. Yes. I mean, I don't know who's going to censor us, but ultimately, like, there is a trade happening there, which is you are giving quality time and quality, what I would call almost training to the team. And there's value in that, real value. And not only that, but I think when a client feels seen and they feel answered and they're learning from you and they're developing a really good relationship, that is worth something to them. And I think that's something I know just in reflections from your clients and knowing you over time that you really focus on, which is the personal relationship. And I think, sometimes that actually manifests in a contract, and it manifests in different ways that you engage with them. So I wouldn't, I don't want to understate how important that actually is if you make yourself, available, because there's other models out there too, where you would never get that kind of interaction with the founder of the agency. You're kind of treated like a cog in the wheel, or, a cookie cutter kind of, project or whatever it may be. So, for anybody that stumbles across this, I think it's important for them to hear, like, you're going to get Abe, you're going to get that person on the other end. Not all the time, right? Because you have your team in place to help, scale and do those things, and you have to in order to service everybody. But ultimately, you're really conscious of that when you're engaging with folks. So I think that's a cool thing, and probably a differentiator for you.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And when I get brands that ask me during that first interview process, they say, why should I go with you? And I'll explain, listen, you should go with me because you'll get me. That is the reality. You're going to get a brand, you're going to get a company whose instructions come from my way of thinking. You're going to get a company in which you are able to speak to me. And when you need something within reason, I am available. You'll be able to get me as easily as you were able to get me today, and that's not true for many other companies. Many other companies, you'll see them very, very publicly, the founders or whoever is at the top of an agency will talk all day long on social media about the subject A, B, and C. But you'll never, ever get to interact with them directly. Like, never, not even during the initial discussions. Here,
different model. Yeah,
I'm part of the picture. I know all of the brands we work with. I know all of the things about the brand which make that brand unique. And when I have a conversation with my team about a brand, they're not just serving me up numbers in a reporting dashboard. We know what the thing is with that. So we understand what makes them special. We understand the challenges a brand might have. We understand what they're looking for from us, and we plug that into the numbers.
Yeah, and I do think that's unique in some ways. Like, I think there's a lot of different models out there that would look at it differently. And to your point, you're still very in touch with all of the brands that you work with, which is pretty cool. So, just speaking on the team generally, Abe, how big are you guys today? I know you're actually looking to hire a little bit right now at this point in time. Where are you at just growth-wise and kind of team-wise, and where is everybody?
So we're at about 20 people now.
Oh, wow.
And it is distributed around the world. So we have people in the United States, we have people in the Philippines, we have people in both Pakistan and India. And I think we're going to be hiring somebody from South America soon. We have wanted to get into both Salka and South Africa with our hiring. I very much like the idea of a very diverse team, because in a remote world, something can happen in one country that really affects the whole country these days. And having people in another country to pick up the slack is an actual thing that happens more often than I'd like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's actually a good call out of just a strength of having a distributed team. Like, the world is not a static place. It's changing all the time. There's disruptions. There's all those things that can really derail you. It sounds like you built some real resilience too. I didn't know you guys were all the way up to 20. I think last we talked, you were probably closer to like 10. So you've almost doubled, since we've last spoken. So first of all, kudos, congrats on the expansion. That's a good sign. And as far as, where you're going, Abe, you're hiring, like we're growing. What's the end game for XP strategy? Is this something you want to get acquired down the road? Is it something that you just want to continue growing because you like doing it? Like what's kind of in your mind as far as the next steps for XP?
So I'm sort of old school, and I just look at a business as something to support my family and get me to and through retirement. That's really what it comes down to. I grew up in a world where an acquisition was like not a thing. It didn't exist as a regular business model of getting a business acquired. Yeah. Now, if it happens, that will be great. I certainly wouldn't mind that. But if it doesn't happen, I'm perfectly fine because I enjoy what I do. And they say if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. I don't know if that's true. There are plenty of days. There are plenty of days when I do what I like and still work really hard, and like I need to fall like right into bed after a whole day. But doing work that resonates with me and feeling a sense of satisfaction with the work I do, that's something that I can see wanting to do forever. And it really is an important thing. When I was selling product myself, there was never really a sense of having happy buyers because all of them are individuals and nameless, and they are just like invoices that fly through a system, and I don't even touch most of them. Yeah. And if anything, I only hear the problems because I do customer support. Right. So I never really got a sense of satisfaction aside from the batch at the end of the day. I never really got that satisfaction. And we always lived on like the hair's edge of, is there going to be a flag in my account in the morning, or what problem is coming in the mailbox? Yeah. With the work that I do now, I actively see that my work helps businesses. And my goal, like people say, oh, what are you promising to do? Or what are you committing to do? Or what can you achieve? And what I try to do is very simple. I try to have a brand be better off working with me than without me. I'll never claim to be perfect in the work I do. There is definitely some nerd out there that has a better algorithm than what I do, and there's probably somebody out there that has a bigger or different team. But every brand I work with is better for having worked with me, and we care. So those make it satisfying.
I think that's a pretty good just framing of the work. Customer support is different than client support, right? I think you have built real relationships with your clients, and certainly keeps me going. It's kept me going over the last 6 years of MixShift as well. Case in point, like, I still talk with every single one of our partners, and I'm very involved in those accounts, and, can't do that forever, right? If you want to continue scaling and growing and doing different things. So sometimes it changes. And, just speaking on scaling and growing your team and doing these things, I'd be curious to hear a little bit, Abe, about what you're thinking about right now for XP, as far as like, what do you need to get figured out to go to the next level? Or maybe if somebody was getting into the agency game today, what advice would you give them about getting to that, 20 employee type of size like you guys are at today?
So the number one thing I'm trying to unravel and figure out properly actually is hiring. We are hiring and trying to. Are
you using our Excel test by chance?
I'm sorry?
Are you using the Excel test? Okay, good.
Yes, we are. And I'm always like suspicious when somebody comes back with a score that's too high because it's unnatural. Like when we gave your Excel test to all the members of our existing team, we had people getting like scores that would not pass like a high school geography test. Yeah. But the truth is those people were amazing at getting every metric that the client wanted. So it gave us a good perspective on what the value is. So the value is somebody that knows how to use Excel. It's not necessary. It's a good indicator of some technical skill level. It's not automatically the only thing you need to do to figure out if somebody's a good fit. So understanding the Amazon system is completely, it's not that.
And different purposes for different seats on the team, right? You don't need everybody to be a quant or an analytical head. You need people that are really good with people, You know,
Right.
you need people that are good with the creative aspect of the thing, which doesn't show. So yeah, certainly one tool in the tool belt for assessment. I think for Todd and I, when we were, you know, building our agencies, and I was an early guy, I was the guy that took Todd's test, that Excel test, early days. You know, I think we looked at it as though Amazon's the Wild West. It's all dealt in numbers initially, right? There's no relational element to, you know, I don't have to go sell to an Amazon buyer, right, to get my product placed. I just need to optimize it and figure out how to make it go. So for us, it was a numbers game early on. I think that's, you know, since that time has certainly expanded into all these other realms of what are the potential services that we can provide to our clients. So I totally get that. What else? What else is kind of in your mind? So hiring is one of those things that's tough, especially when you're doing it.
Hiring is definitely one of the things that are tough. And the other part is trying to systematize everything. So whenever something comes up, I always ask a couple of questions. So the first question I ask is, how do we fix this issue right now? And the second question is, how did this thing happen? And the third thing is, what thing can we do to make sure this thing never happens again? And I do that with anything that comes up. I immediately work with the assumption that it's going to happen more than one time. That's it. Like there are true things that never will happen again, like weird things, but that's not most things. Almost everything that comes across our desk is probably happened a few times without you even noticing, and will very likely happen more times. And the more we can build a bulletproof system, the better the work we do will be. And
can you just give me an example of like how does that actually manifest, Abe? Are you writing an SOP in a Google Doc? Are you doing a video recording? Like, what does that actually look like for your team? How do you distribute that?
It looks different for every situation. That actually is one of the things which makes it a thorny challenge. We have restructured our internal ClickUp system more than once. So the system that I thought I needed ended up looking different when I got it and started using it. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. Yeah, there are definitely, everyone looks different. One of the things I'm trying to work on right now is a good keyword management system. So some brands are more keyword focused than others. Some are really just interested in their sales. They don't care how they get there. Some are very, very focused on achieving certain ranks for certain keywords. And the bigger your catalog is, and the more successful your product is, the larger the number of keywords that you need to manage gets. And building out an effective system to manage thousands of keywords is an interesting challenge. Dozens and hundreds, there are tools already that exist for that. Once you get to the thousands, everything standard sort of breaks, because it's impossible to effectively scroll through thousands of lines and get many points of action out of it. So it's a thing we're trying to unwrap. We're making progress on it, and probably once we figure that out, something else will come up. But
I'm sure.
I think the other thing we're trying to figure out is, I mentioned ClickUp, and realistically, it's how to make ClickUp less of a weight on the system, because besides the work is the creating a task and showing the progress on the task and marking a task as done. That is its own piece of time during the day. And the more things a person does during a week, the more time they're spending saying they did the things. So I want to spend less time saying I did a thing or creating a statement of what we're going to do, and more time doing.
Yeah, and I just, as somebody who's worked in agencies, one of my least favorite parts was tracking time, right? And it's hard
I actually don't care about time, by the way. I tell my team, here is your workload. I don't care if you get it done in half of a week or in a week and 15 extra hours. This is a load of work which is expected an average time person to take about a week. Just get that done.
I think that's a good way to approach it. I know some agencies they track time so they can understand, head count, effective utilization rate. They can understand, where are we profitable on different clients. But I think ultimately, no matter how you do it, it comes down to good visibility to the task, making sure that things get done in the first place, to your point of ClickUp. So totally understand how that's a pretty critical piece of it. Just to dot some I's and cross some T's, I wanted to ask, number one, you work with sellers and vendors? Do you work with both with vendors as well?
We work with sellers and vendors.
Yep.
I would say we probably are 90-10 in terms of sellers and vendors. And in most cases, the vendors we work with are coming to us because they are sellers that need us to handle the vendor part of their businesses as well. That realistically is that mix most of the time.
Sure, sure. And as far as global marketplaces, any off limits, or do you guys work across all of the marketplaces?
We work across all of them. Again, most of our clients are .com centric or .com/Canada centric, and all of the other marketplaces are sort of add-ons for them. We don't really have many accounts that are focused on DE or UK.
Sure. So US primary with Canada mixed in, and then some over in the EU and UK.
Yep.
Totally.
We end up touching, I think we touch every marketplace, but yeah, the focus is different than touching.
Yes, definitely, and have some nuance there too, certainly. And how about categories or niches? Any types of products that you really like to work with, or have a particular kind of angle in?
We handle most products categories on Amazon, I think, at this point. Like better than others, I don't think there's anything I like better than others, but I think we have built a bit of an expertise in handling candy, and we have built an expertise in footwear. So we have like a decent number of brands in each of those. So it has turned into an interesting place that brands seem to gravitate to us for.
I mean, there are worse categories to play in than candy and footwear, certainly.
100%. Footwear is challenging because the catalog sizes can get large quickly with sizes and things. But
and inventory and some of those other things.
Inventory management for footwear and for apparel in general is a significant piece of their work. Like it really is.
Because there's so much seasonality to it, and you're in different ordering cycles and buying cycles and trends, and fashion comes into play, which I know you're a super fashionable guy, so you probably get it for the most part.
Yeah, I get the seasons, and I get the holidays, and I get the characters and stuff. Yeah, so we deal with those. Yes.
But you get the vibe. You're out there in New York. You see the pulse. You know what's going on with kids. You got 2 boys in college, right?
Let's see. Now it's 1, but yes, probably in a year or 2 it'll be 2 again. They cycle through.
Yeah, certainly. Which is why we have to keep working, right?
That's another reason I have this. Yes.
Yeah,
so any number that I sell out for has to pay for multiple kids to get through college.
There you go. So you have your number in mind, definitely. One of the things I like to ask kind of at the end here, Abe, too, I'll ask the first one first, which is any really kind of thorny or interesting problem you're working on in Amazon right now, or maybe big bets about, interesting kind of revelations or things that are changing in the Amazon landscape that you kind of have your eye on or kind of itch in your brain right now?
I think the biggest thing is probably surrounding DSP. Yeah. So we have been working more with DSP than in the past, and trying to get metrics that give a clear picture is a challenge. So when we work with supplement brands, getting a clear relationship between the DSP campaigns and what they do for the brand and long-term value is an interesting thing to unwrap. Yeah. And the same thing with brands that are available in retail and want to invest in brand awareness. Getting DSP to work well and effectively in those situations is an interesting thing to try and unwrap.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a really big Pandora's box to open to me. I've been working with some of those clients as well, and there's kind of unlimited ways to slice the data and data to bring to bear, and and flexibility in different formats that you can work with. And yeah, to your point, I don't know that reporting is super straightforward in the DSP space yet, and in particular contribution, and attribution. Which are 2 very different things, of course. But
yeah, DSP at this point, truthfully, is a storytelling exercise. Yes. It really, really is a storytelling exercise. And if the story fits what you're trying to achieve, it's a fit. If the story is not fitting, there is no data, which is going to be the obvious thing which makes it clear you needed it.
Yeah, it is. They are hard dots to connect, no doubt. So I think, DSP is certainly, not going anywhere, getting more and more prominent every day. Amazon is lowering some barriers to using that, but definitely it's becoming a fit, especially for a lot of, PPC folks where it wasn't necessarily a consideration before. I think it's become more accessible. And now with like the performance plus campaigns and brand plus campaigns, better returning too, which I think that was a really hard kind of hurdle to get over. Early days was just being able to validate the return and have good enough return to kind of justify the dollars and taking them away potentially from like PPC budgets, which, you know, is always a interesting conversation. So I think the last question that I like to close with, Abe, before we wrap is just, did I miss asking you anything that you wanted me to or hoped I would ask, or now thinking of it, would like to cover? Anything I missed?
Oh gosh, this has covered a lot for sure.
Yeah.
The question which you haven't asked, and I don't even know if I'd want to answer at this point, is like, what's your most embarrassing moment or something like that? Like, some people manage to ask questions around that, and of course I don't have that answer at this point. But yeah, that's probably the only thing you didn't get to in all of this.
Well, I would never put you on the spot for embarrassment. One question I do have in my list is simply, you know, maybe what are some of the things you learned or mishaps you had along the way as you were growing your agency that you would advise somebody who's just getting started to kind of avoid? You know, you mentioned the hiring piece is hard, some of these other things. Maybe what are some of those trip ups that you had early on that or stumbles that you could help others avoid?
So stumble number one is waiting too long to hire your first employee. I'll tell you that. And it's actually a useful story. So at the beginning, it was me and a couple of PPC specialists for probably a year and a half. And there was just like 2, 3, 4 of us. And I was managing all of the client communications. Every phone call, every email, all went through me. And one day I had a brand say, hey, we need to end this relationship. And I was surprised because the account does well. We did well with them. And they said, the account does well. For sure, you hit every metric and you hit every number, but it's too hard to get a hold of you. I can't wait two days to hear back about a thing that needs to happen. And that was a big wake up, because that account, we did very well for that account. And it was a complex account. Like, we really did actual good technical work. And it was a big wake up. And I said, there is no such thing as a large company that has only one person communicating with their customers. No such thing. Yep. And that spurred me to start hiring my team members that interact with my brand and my clients. And that has been a game changer. It has been a game changer. It has been a thing I focus on, because when I was handling 30 to 40 brands myself, when I have a client success manager that has 6 or 7 people that he's managing, which is, I think, on the low side for a lot of agencies, they will never be able to give me the excuse that they're too busy to answer an email. It's sure. Absolutely like, if I can handle 30, albeit badly, you can handle 6 well. And so going through that informed my expectations. And one of the pieces of feedback we get is that your team is very responsive. We try to answer everything same day, wherever humanly possible. It's not like 4:59 is the end of the workday, and 4:59 and 15 seconds, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow morning. It's certainly not 24 hours, but we try to be good and responsive when brands need things from us.
Yeah, it's a good tip. Funnily enough, I've heard, from other founders too, it's like, oh, we hired too fast. And I think that is actually more a function of the, number one, the growth, where you're at kind of in that growth trajectory. And number two, the quality of the clients, what they're bringing to bear, and the type of work that you're doing, right? So, you were very involved in those counts, and you found where your ceiling was. There's only one Abe and only so many.
Well, I probably had a different challenge than a lot of other founders. A lot of other founders are, not to generalize, but a lot of other founders are younger people or people early on in their stages of their life. So the things they need financially are pretty low. I am, for better or worse, I have a lifetime that's been built up and a family to support. And because of that, what I need from the business is probably a little bit more. And not that much more. It's not like I need $100 million before I can afford to hire a person, but it is a little bit later on in terms of matching one to the other.
Certainly. And with that, I think with that experience, you probably have a pretty decent network too. You mentioned that your clients come mostly word of mouth. You're really kind of centered right there in New York, which is surrounded by a lot of great sellers and a lot of good e-commerce activity. So, certainly, probably a different perspective just on, how the agency was growing and what, your roadblocks, which you were personally running into. So, Abe, with that, I think we covered a lot. There's a lot of good stuff here for folks to stumble on you for the first time. If they see this, they'll certainly recognize you on the public. So if you see the beard out in the wild, please say hi to Abe. Abe, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time. We'll stop the recording here and then we'll say goodbye after, if you're cool with it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah, absolutely.